Hello there, you lovely people. We're going to talk about guilt and narcissistic families. So, why am I talking about this subject? I talked about guilt a number of times in my other videos, but the other day I was talking to a follower, and she described to me that she did seek psychological help when she noticed that she had some issues with her family, particularly with her mom. And at this point, the therapist that she was seeing noticed that she was very distraught, which is natural, right? When you're dealing with narcissists and you're finally learning what narcissism is and you're starting to set boundaries and understand the whole dynamics, normally we get quite distraught. And and seeing this patient's emotional state, the therapist recommended that she not distance herself from the family because, and I quote, "You're going to feel guilt later on in your life." Now, I'm Brazilian, and in Brazil, we have a very family oriented culture, and people have a hard time understanding that families can be dysfunctional, that they can be destructive, that they can be outright toxic, and that sometimes the best thing you could possibly do is go no contact with someone, or go low contact with someone, or go gray rock, right? Not have contact. Now, for a number of people from my country, I know, and I know from abroad, I have a number of clients from all over the world, from Australia, from Sweden, from Korea, from Canada. So I know that this is common for people outside of Brazil as well. Guilt is used within family systems to keep everybody in the same dynamics. Now, particularly when we're talking about narcissistic families, there's a certain structure that goes on there with the scapegoat and the golden child and whatnot that is essential for the family dynamics. Many of you might have noticed that when a scapegoat wakes up and decides, what the heck, I am leaving these dynamics and I'm off to the world to start my own family and to do my own thing. What happens when the scapegoat leaves? The golden child or the invisible child or the inadequate child or somebody else, the husband, the wife, somebody else becomes the scapegoat. Because narcissistic personalities, not being able to admit to fault, they need to externalize the blame for everything. So they're going to need a scapegoat. You know, this is why when you finally find out about narcissism, even if you're the golden child or whatever you are in your family dynamics, and you start distancing yourself, you're actually threatening the whole family. As you distance yourself from a dynamics that keeps everybody in check, nobody has to grow up, nobody has to take responsibility. Everybody can just keep on lying to themselves about how the family is perfect and how the problem of the family is just that one person. You know what I mean? The scapegoat. Nobody has to question anything. Nobody has to look at how they are actually all screwed up emotionally. And it's not just the scapegoat, the whole family is going crazy. You know what I mean? So you shake things up, and the family is going to guilt trip you to smithereens until you stop trying to be an individual, having your own values, making your own choices, going your own way, feeling safe and accepting of your own nature, which is something super taboo in a family, right? And that's not in a narcissistic family. You can never be feeling safe and accepting of who you are. Hey guys, if you're getting any value from this video, then download your free PDF, Break the Chains, 10 Steps to Stop Your Narcissistic Parents' Control. You can find the link in the description box. So this is why the whole, oh, don't distance yourself from your family, you're going to feel guilt down the line, is like literally the worst piece of advice anyone could ever give someone who is dealing with narcissists. Now, I want to tell you, if you are dealing with this tremendous guilt, I want to give you some insights and some information about what I notice, having facilitated this process for hundreds of children of narcissists over the past few years. As I specialize in this topic, I notice that there are patterns. And what I want to tell you with this video is that right when we find out about narcissism and we start reading about it and we become part of online communities and we feel validated for the very first time, even if you haven't distanced yourself physically from your family yet, it's almost as if they notice that you're threatening the dynamics in some way. And they might start to act up and act out before you even mention that you want to, have more space for yourself or move out or whatever. And then the guilt tripping is going to be really heavy on top of you in order to dissuade you from your individualization process. And at this point, what will probably happen as well is really intense cognitive dissonance. And this is what makes it hard on top of the guilt. So, what's cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance is when you have a certain view of the world. Like, for example, you spent your whole life lying to yourself about how my family's okay. It's not that bad. I just distort things. I'm probably making a mountain out of a molehill. Maybe I'm just an ungrateful child. Other people don't seem to have problems with this. I might be the wrong one. When you start gaslighting yourself, cognitive dissonance is when reality is showing you its truth. Like, for example, now we can finally see, oh my God, these are narcissistic abusive behavior. Oh my God, I thought this was love, but I can totally tell that this is manipulation now. But this new information of reality that is up in your face, it conflicts with the fantasy you were living in, with the lies you told yourself about how things were not that bad and how you were the problem in your family and how, you just exaggerate things. And then it's almost as if you have these two screaming sets of voices in your mind. And the first one is, you're a bad person. You're a bad child. You need to do what your parents want. You need to do what your family wants. And the other voice is, what? The veil has been taken from my eyes, and I can definitely finally see what's going on in my family, and I'm not going back to that. I know about narcissism. I know about narcissistic abuse. I know about boundaries. I know about toxic guilt. Okay, guilt. Let's differentiate between toxic guilt and healthy guilt. But before we get to that, this cognitive dissonance of just having these two voices really coming at each other in your mind and trying to gain control of your inner authority, this is going to happen in a very intense way that's going to leave you absolutely distraught. Your anxiety is going to get horrible. Your depression is too. Whatever autoimmune diseases you have are going to act up. But this is only going to happen for a period of months. This is what I want to tell you about. This is what the whole video is about. I've noticed throughout the years that the children of narcissists who validate what they want to do, and they start doing this in a radical fashion in terms of they actually pause various times throughout the day and before deciding what shirt they're gonna use, what food they're gonna eat, what decision they're gonna make. They just, instead of just listening to their families, they will actually make a habit of pausing various times throughout the day and just going inwards and asking oneself, do I want this? And if they find that they want something else and they just have the courage to give themselves permission to do what makes sense to them, even though they know their family is not going to approve, well, you can imagine they'll feel tremendous guilt. They'll feel tremendous shame. They'll get really confused. The cognitive dissonance is going to intensify. So why the heck are you telling me to do that stuff that causes guilt, Tati? Because it's only going to last a few months. I've noticed that if you have this habit of pausing throughout the day, internalizing, going within, and asking your heart what makes sense to you, and then having the courage of doing that and not what your family wants, you're going to be absolutely crazy and thinking like you're going to lose it at any given moment for about 3 to 6 months. And then something magical, miraculous happens. A switch goes off in your mind. Or rather, goes off or goes on. The narcissistic abuse switch goes off, and then, oh my God, I have a self switch goes on. And from that moment on, it's not that you don't feel the guilt, that you don't have the same problems. It's that they don't control you in the same way. So that's what I wanted to summarize. The guilt is going to happen. It's going to be the most intense it's ever been in your life for the first 3 to 6 months after you've discovered narcissistic abuse. It's at this moment where you're going to have intense cognitive dissonance, where you feel like you're going crazy, you're exaggerating things, and you're just a bad person. You have to push through these first 3 to 6 months, because if you do this, if you keep on pausing throughout the day at various moments and asking your inner self what makes sense to you, and if you give yourself permission to follow what your inner self tells you to do in about 3 to 6 months, something changes in your mind and you will never again be controlled by the same level of guilt. You're still going to feel it, but it's not going to be the same. I'm telling you that in 3 to 6 months, something's going to change inside you. And you're going to look at your family and you're going to see them as children. And they're not going to have the same control over you. But you have to keep on walking through the guilt by doing what makes sense to your heart. So, have you had this experience when you found out about narcissistic abuse? Did you get really confused? Did you have these two sets of voices screaming at each other, making you feel like you're going crazy? Was the guilt really bad? Did you decide to go through it, or did you go back to what your family told you to do? How did these two things impact you? I find that when we give ourselves permission to finally make our own decisions, and we do this for a few months, then we can observe, oftentimes for the first time in our lives, the concrete consequences of trusting ourselves. And then when we observe that when we make our own choices, life is pretty interesting. Life is pretty cool. It feels better. Even if we make mistakes, we look at that other option we had by our family, our toxic family, where we had to be that tiny little person without an opinion. You know what I mean? Or that person who needed to have opinion, but only toxic ones so they could be part of the family dynamics. You're going to look at that and you're going to be like, I really don't want that. I have no idea how I survived in that environment for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And as you have the practical experiences of seeing the concrete consequences of your own choices, it's just natural to move towards that direction. And that's when the guilt stops controlling you, even if you still feel it. Okie dokie, guys. Well, tell me if this made any sense to you. Let me know if you have any interesting ideas for other lives or other videos. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much. See you around.